So we've been watching a lot of television. I think me and Chris could certainly attest to that. I think, Stein, you are as well. And during this time, really, what else is there to do? I mean, yeah, you can go outside, take a jog, and, order some food, but there's really not a lot else we can do other than watch television. So I've been watching a lot of TV. I normally do anyway, but certainly more than usual now. Besides the news, we were watching the news yesterday in the press conference, and me and Chris were red in the face. We were so angry at the press conference. We don't need to go there now. We've been talking about it for 2.5 hours. However, we were looking forward to this show. I know I was, called The Last Dance. It's a documentary. ESPN did a great OJ documentary. They really do a good job. So I was really looking forward to this. Basically, it's the life of Michael Jordan, the championships that he won with the Chicago Bulls, the trials and tribulations that he had to go through. And it was interesting because the first 2 hours, the first two episodes were yesterday, and they went back to when he was a child and then high school, and then they skipped to 96, 97. Then they went back to the mid-'80s. So I'm talking about the things I didn't like about the show. I didn't like the fact that they kept going back and forth. It wasn't in chronological order. That was frustrating to me. I want to hear more about 96, 97, and then they go back to when he was in high school and college asking his mom for money. Now, that's all great. I want to hear about that stuff. But would it have been too hard to put it in chronological order? I didn't like the order they put it in. I also kind of didn't like the fact that, at least in these first couple episodes, I wanted to hear more about his personal life. I wanted to hear more about his upbringing. We didn't hear a lot about that. In fact, we learned more about Scottie Pippen's upbringing than we did Michael Jordan. I didn't like that.
Well, let me bounce this off you, though, Brian. It's not supposed to be just about Michael Jordan. What the premise of this is called The Last Dance. The reason it's called that is because Phil Jackson basically, that was the theme for that 1997-98 season. It was a record-breaking season, 72 wins, I believe, right? They won the NBA championship, thought of as one of the greatest teams in NBA history, and it was what the entire documentary is going to be about. And by the way, they just released the first two last night that we watched. It's going to be a 10-part series, I believe. But the whole premise is based on that team and that era, those three championships between, I believe, 96 through 98, where they won 3 straight championships, that second round of the Bulls. It's not just about Michael Jordan.
And that's a good point.
So
I
it's
understand
about
that.
all the relationships.
Okay,
but I do agree with you, Brian. I 100% agree with you as far as I didn't really understand why you're bouncing back and forth in time frames as far as how they were going about, because you would expect in a documentary like that you would just go like a straight through timeline. If you're going to go back, then I get that. That's fine. You can do that. But there was a lot of bouncing around, and there wasn't. It wasn't really,
not a lot of continuity.
It didn't seem like a lot of strategy to it. It was
so
kind of like scattered that way.
So we agree on that. Let's talk about, that you always had, sadly, a kid in high school or middle school that was picked on or made fun of, and you kind of felt bad for him. I mean, it's hard to feel bad for a guy that's worth like $50 billion. I don't know if Jerry Krause was worth that much, but Jerry Krause, in a lot of these behind the scenes, people were making fun of him. I mean, there was a spot where
the general manager of the Chicago Bulls,
so there was
the guy who basically brought that team together.
Correct. Right. So there was a point before the layup line where Michael Jordan looks across and says, "Hey, Jerry, you want to do some layups with? We'll lower the hoop for you." And then there are some other things that said, "Jerry, is there any?" Jordan goes to Jerry, "Is there any way you could get any shorter, Jerry?" And then Phil Jackson even admitted that they had to physically stop Scottie Pippen several times from getting into it with Jerry Krause because he was so inappropriate. Now, listen, the Scottie Pippen story was my favorite part of these first two episodes. Yeah. Now, we all know he's called no tipping Pippen. We know that. We know that Scottie Pippen hasn't been the nicest, most generous person throughout his life. We know that already. But here's the stuff I didn't know. Scottie Pippen held such resentment to Jerry Krause when he should have held resentment for his agent. They signed him to what was it, an 8 year?
It was a 7-year, $18 million deal.
Now, there's
back in the early 90s,
There's no question that Pippen should have made $80 or $90 million. But that's not Jerry Krause's fault. Scottie Pippen signed on the dotted line. He had a bad agent. Don't blame Jerry Krause for getting an unbelievable. In fact, compliment Jerry Krause. He got Scottie Pippen, who at the time in his prime was probably the second best player in the NBA, and he got him for next to nothing.
Well, the Bulls fans definitely are complimenting Jerry Krause, but not Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen's not going to compliment him.
Second best is a stretch.
Well, it's not a stretch to Magic Johnson, Phil Jackson, and Larry Bird, because they all said that.
Yeah, I don't think he was. But
that's your opinion.
The real glaring stat was in '97 when Jordan made $33 million and Pippen made made 2.8.
Steve Kerr was making three
That
times
was
the
crazy.
money that Pippen was making.
He was the 6th highest paid guy on that
the team.
97-98 team.
Bill Wennington was making more money. It's
That was
unbelievable.
But
Yeah.
he did get paid with the Blazers. He ended up making
Okay.
$110 million in his career. He made
We'll
more
get
money
there.
than Jordan did long term.
Understood. We'll get there, and I don't feel bad for Pippen. I don't want to make it sound like I do. And you're right. Eventually, he did get paid. But here's the part of the documentary that was incredible to me. Pippen held so much resentment towards Jerry Krause that there were times where the whole team had to tell him to knock it off. This is the worst part about what we learned about Pippen yesterday. And by the way, I didn't know this. Do you remember when Pippen had an issue with his foot and he had to have surgery? Mm-hmm. Even Michael Jordan said that what Pippen did was selfish. This was the end of Pippen's contract, and he was trying to get back at Jerry Krause and the organization, not thinking about his teammates, not thinking about winning a championship. He could have waited till the end of the season to get his surgery. Instead, he decided to do it mid-season. Spitefully, he was a spite surgery, if you want to call it that. It was a spite surgery.
And Larry David would be very proud of you, Brian.
Michael Jordan was asked about it, and Michael Jordan said it himself. What Pippen did was selfish. Now, Phil Jackson kind of took Pippen's side and said, I understand, but let's call it for what it is. It was a very selfish thing to do, and this series yesterday made Pippen out to be a really, really bad, selfish guy. It also showed how petty Michael Jordan is, constantly making fun of Jerry Krause. Look, Jerry Krause was a guy that said some controversial things. Jerry Krause was a guy that said, it's the organization that wins championships, not players. Listen, I wouldn't use that verbiage, but did Jerry Krause deserve the cheap shots and the disrespect from the players that he got? It got to a point where Krause had to sit right in the front of the bus because he didn't want to deal with that. I mean, it got so bad back there that there were players like Joe Klein that said that, they had to kind of separate Krause from some of the other players on the team. To me, that is completely unacceptable.
Well, the story behind that, of course, was during this situation with Scottie Pippen as far as his contract. And Pippen, there were times, you're bringing up instances where Pippen got into it with Jerry Krause. We're talking about Pippen apparently was in the back of buses, like just dropping F-bombs on Jerry Krause and calling him names and just hammering him. So that was something that a lot of us, like you pointed out, just learned from these documentaries. What's the big appeal, guys, about this documentary? A big appeal, I'll tell you what it is. It's called unseen footage, never before seen footage,
yeah.
right? It's audio clips. It's stories from players that we didn't know about back then when we were actually following this team and watching this team play. That is the big draw of this entire miniseries.
And the fact
you brought it up as far as fact
that we're sports starved right now.
Yes,
that helps.
And the fact everybody
Good
is
timing.
chomping at the bit, right, Stein,
Yep.
to get a chance to see something that's
Yep.
new as far as sports. And so that there's so many. And look, there's only been 2 episodes of this. There's 8 more. It's going to be interesting to see more of these stories that we didn't know about come out in this documentary.
2 things that struck me in this documentary. One, that was at Jordan's second year in the league. He had broken his foot.
Right.
And there was it was crazy. The doctor said there's a 10%, it's a small percentage, but a 10% chance if you play on that broken foot, and it breaks it, even further, your career is over. Michael Jordan's career, he risked going out on that court. His career could have been over in 1986. I mean, there would have been no Air Jordan. There would have been no championships. But Jordan, being the competitor that he is, still went out there anyway, saying, well, you said 10% that it could end my career, but 90% that it won't. So I like those odds. So that was the thing I found very interesting. The second thing I found interesting was just how what's the word I'm looking for? How weak that Bulls franchise was before Jordan got there.
Yeah.
I mean, they showed
they were atrocious.
They showed those crowds at the Chicago arena where they played before.
Artist Gilmore.
Before they built
Woolridge.
the United Center, way before that. No one is going to those games.
Yeah. No.
I mean, nobody. And then Jordan turned that whole thing around. That was incredible to see the night and day difference there.
To what you're saying, they played some sound clips from a couple NBA players before Jordan's prime, Mark Eaton, and a couple other players that made some idiotic comments and said there's not one player that can take over a franchise. Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, he changed the game.
But also to Stein's point, as far as Chicago Stadium not getting any attendance, they talked about the indoor soccer team, the Chicago Sting, were outdrawing the Bulls in the NBA back in 1980.
I think when
you
saw after Kobe Bryant tragically died in that crash, I was watching a lot of the practice footage where he would swear at other players and get into it with other players, and they showed a little bit of that footage with Michael Jordan. And as you know, Michael Jordan got into fist fights with Bill Cartwright, with Steve Kerr. He got into fights. they're so similar, Kobe and Jordan, in that aspect. Their competitive nature. I think they're very different people. They were, sadly to say, with Kobe off the floor, very different people. But on the floor, to me, they were 2 and 2 alike. That competitive fire, all that Michael Jordan cared about. And by the way, he's still like this on the golf course and in competitive. Jordan is a nut. They're psychotic when it comes to winning. All they care about is winning. They don't care about anything else. They will make your life a living hell if they know it'll help you win, help the team win. And that's what Jordan was. That's what Kobe was. That's what Magic, Bird. All these guys care. And I don't think there's enough players like that in professional sports today. There's some, but not a lot.
Kevin Durant.
I said there's some.
Yeah,
but
Kevin Durant to me is.
But he's a different cat, though.
Is Michael Jordan 5 inches taller? Honestly,
well,
I mean, dude, he literally played. He tried to play with a torn ACL, and he ended up tearing his Achilles. I mean, the guy was.
I have no doubt.
We watched Kevin Durant during summer basketball go one-on-one about a year and a half ago against 9 All-Stars for an hour and a half after playing an entire 2-hour practice. Destroyed every single one of them and wanted to keep going.
There's no doubt that Kevin Durant. It cares a lot about winning. Like I said, there are some, but not a lot. I think there were more people that cared about winning in the 80s than there are today. But with that being said, Kevin Durant never struck me as the kind of guy where a lot of players just don't want to play with him. Kevin Durant didn't strike me as a guy in practice that would punch other guys in practice and scream and swear. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were exactly those type of guys, and I love that. And I think we need. Listen, you're not going to see another Michael Jordan in our lifetime. Not going to see another Larry Bird most likely, or Kobe Bryant, but. I love the footage of seeing Michael Jordan, and you saw it. He was yelling and swearing at Ron Harper in a practice, and they showed that footage. And, man, I love that. And I love that for a couple different reasons. Number one, this isn't about money. This isn't about fame. This isn't about anything or even busting balls. It's about Jordan doesn't like what he's seeing from one of his teammates. He's pissed off at him, and it's basketball-related and basketball-related only, and I love to see that because it's such a natural thing. It's like kids on the playground jawing at one another, but yet you have the best player in the world doing it. And that's the one thing about Michael Jordan that I love the most is that you can say what you want about him with the tipping and with the womanizing and playing baseball and all that. The guy wanted to win more than anybody at that time, and I love that quality.
So he gets a pass for being a horrible human being because he's a phenomenal athlete, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
No.
All right.
No. Wait a second.
Well, I don't say. I don't know if pass is the right way to look at it.
Make no mistake. Hold on a second. I said I'm talking about his basketball career.
Right.
Michael Jordan is not a good human being.
No.
Michael Jordan is a womanizer. Michael Jordan has been a horrific tipper for most of his life. He is not a kind human being. I've never said Michael Jordan is a good person. And by the way,
Brian,
I never will.
Are you a womanizer?
Am I a woman? In what aspect? Do I cheat? Is that what you're saying?
No, are you a womanizer?
Okay, well, my definition of a womanizer...
I would say that you probably are.
Okay, well, I disagree with you because I'm single and I've never cheated on a girlfriend in my life. When I say womanizer, I mean married cheating.
Have you ever dated 4 different women at the same time?
I'm not sure what this has to do with Michael Jordan.
And were they aware of each other?
I'm not sure what this has to do with Michael Jordan.
Just answer the question.
Okay. But can you tell me what this has to do with the conversation?
Well, I think that you're calling Michael Jordan a womanizer, which makes him a horrible human being.
He's constantly.
I believe that you are a womanizer.
Okay. Well, here's the difference between me and Michael Jordan. Number one, I've never been married before.
Okay.
Number two, I've never cheated on a girlfriend before. I've been cheated on before.
I think you mean adulterer. Right? Womanizing's okay.
Well,
we can all get behind womanizing.
Maybe there's maybe there's a difference between womanizing and committing adultery.
Right.
But I think no, I don't think I'm a woman. I really don't. I think I treat women with respect. I do.
I'm interested how this
Chris,
conversation about Michael Jordan competitiveness turned to.
I have no idea why.
Brian Shapiro
do you think that Brian Shapiro is a womanizer, Chris?
I don't believe that he is.
Do you think?
I believe that if he had that opportunity, that he would take advantage of it and try to do it. But the nature of the circumstances, the nature of his life,
you don't think
doesn't lead to that.
You don't think he has the chops for it?
I don't know if I would describe it that way. I just don't foresee him. I just don't perceive Brian in that way. So I guess I'm saying that.
How's your luck with women these days?
No, all I'm saying.
How's your luck with women these days?
No, Brian.
No. Answer my question now. You want to get personal with me? How's your luck with women these days?
First of all, Brian, this conversation is. I will answer your question.
He has a beautiful wife at home.
I do. I have a wife and I have a daughter. Okay.
Which
and
is
an
which is
adorable
wonderful.
daughter, by the way.
But that's not what I asked you.
That's what I have going
But
on.
that's not what I
now,
asked
now
you.
that being said, Brian, I'm saying if you're calling Michael Jordan a womanizer, and that's one of the reasons why you think he's a horrible human being.
That's there's many other reasons.
Okay, well,
There's
adulterer makes sense, but womanizer.
There's many other reasons.
Okay.
There's many other reasons why I would say he's a bad
I think you
person.
might be nitpicking a little bit on on what name he's being called as far as Michael Jordan.
Well, like Donald Trump, for example, definitely
Absolutely a womanizer.
definitely an adulterer,
Absolutely
probably
a
also
womanizer.
a womanizer.
I will only
simultaneously.
I will only speak for myself and say
JFK, Roosevelt, Warren Buffett,
womanizers.
all womanizers,
All womanizers.
all adulterers.
Yes.
I don't know how we got from Michael Jordan to this, but I can only speak for myself when I say that.
We
hold
normally
on.
have hate mail here. I think this was JD's attempt at doing a hate mail segment, except all the letters were coming from him.
I can only say and speak for myself that I am very happy with my personal situation right now when it comes to women. I am very happy. I don't speak for anybody else at the table, but I am very happy with my own specific situation. And I could be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that there are some people at the table that wish they were in my situation. I'll leave it at that. And I'm not a womanizer. I don't commit adultery and all that other stuff. But I am very happy with my situation, and I can give you a lot of names of people that have dated me. Not he, she's. And they would say that I treat them with respect, and I still talk to them. JD, how many ex-girlfriends do you still talk to?
Currently?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I'm not going to answer that question. Brian.
Right, because it's probably zero.
Because the answer is
it's probably zero.
because the answer
Okay.
is
Fair enough.
definitely zero.
Okay, well, it's not with me. You know why? Because I remain friends with women that I've dated because they respect me and I respect
You also
them.
don't have a wife who would be angry if you spoke to.
Well, that's your problem, not mine. That's your problem.
You got
not
to factor
mine.
that. You got to factor that in as well.
Well, when I was engaged,
Okay.
She didn't have a problem with me speaking to my exes, but then again, she probably wouldn't have had a problem with me sleeping with them either. So that's another story for another show. See, here's the difference, though. JD.
Boy, that was some documentary.
There we go. Stay tuned to The Last Dance. It's going to be very interesting the rest of the way, folks.
I don't know how that conversation.
I can't
got
wait
there.
to
I really
see if
don't.
they win the championship.
Really
Yes.
don't. At least JD's laughing for the whole
Do they
show.
pull it out,
He
Stein?
looked like he wanted to stab me
Do
throughout
they
the whole
get
show.
it done? We'll see.
I predict Bulls in 7 over the Utah Jazz.
Well, I do hope we get to it. But it's a good show. I'm glad we have something to look forward to. And I'm glad that I believe it's 2 hours a week we're getting, right? 2 different episodes, hour each a week. So fun show. And I look forward to more behind-the-scenes footage. I want to see footage of Michael Jordan knocking out Steve Kerr. That would make it for me. That would apparently they
Or
got no
just a
big fight.
scrap between the two.
Can you imagine Jordan and Bill Cartwright? Bill Cartwright is enormous. Can you imagine that? Apparently that happened at a practice. Phil Jackson's a big dude, too. I'm sure he got in between them and tried to break him up.
Phil's like 6'8".
He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's not small.
He's a big dude. All right, it's been a fun show, Chris. Thanks for coming in as always.
No doubt.
No time for hate mail today. It was just JD's segment to make fun of me, I guess, but that's fine.
I was not making fun of you at all.
No, not at all.
No, I was not.
at
No,
all.
I really was not making
Accusing
fun
me
of
of being
you.
a womanizer is not making fun of me at all. You're
That's
right.
not making fun of you.
No, that's okay. That's
Stein
fine.
could give him a double dose tomorrow.
fine.
Hate mail, right?
It's fine.
Maybe.
Fine.
Possibly.
Well, because
All right, we
according to
gotta
you,
go.
everyone wants to be a womanizer.
No, that's not true at all. I don't feel I've never said that before, and that's not true. I respect women a great deal. That is not correct. All right, we're going to take a break for about 21 hours, ladies and gentlemen. More reaction probably if you missed our interview with Mayor Carolyn Goodman. We'll put it up on our social media page at the Vegas Take. It was very, very interesting. Sean Hannity coming up next, folks. Please stay safe. Have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow.